Hello, bonjour, and welcome, bienvenue. This video was prepared in response to a request from a colleague at my university. If you have a request for an Excel-related task, please consider letting me know about it in the comments. So sometimes a very large database or data range may be available to you, but really you're only interested in certain entries or in certain fields, columns. For example, you might be able to download a copy of a huge range of student enrollment data, but you really only need some of those data for the next steps of your individual specific workflow. So in such a case, it might be useful to create a new custom-built table based on the extraction of specific data from the larger database. So in this video, we'll see how it's possible to create a spreadsheet that can be used to regularly perform the data extraction. And this would allow a small custom table to be prepared rapidly and repeatedly based on a larger data set copied from a database. So for the purposes of this video, I'll be working with a large range of fictitious student enrollment data. And let's say that I want to work with only half the number of fields. For this example, only those records pertaining to students of a certain sex. So the purpose of this spreadsheet is to extract only the records of students of a certain sex and to only show the fields or columns of those records that interest me. So to expedite this demonstration, I've already grayed out the fields or column headers that do not interest me. And this will remind me later of which columns to delete. But for now, I'm going to copy the header row by selecting the entire row, clicking on one, typing Control-C, and now I'm going to navigate to a different sheet that I've already created and named Extracted Data. And this will be the machinery sheet of this workbook. So I'll paste the headers in place, clicking in A1 and typing Control-V, knowing that the gray headers are those that I want to delete later. Now off to the right, you'll note that I've already created a gray column S to separate the data range from the cells shown in column T, which are what I'm going to use to select which records to keep. Now, to make this next step a little bit more intuitive, I'm going to navigate to cell N2. Now, overall, my goal is to type a series of formulas that will copy each record from the raw data sheet, but only if the value in cell N on the raw data sheet is equal to a specific value, namely F as specified on the extracted data sheet. So I'm going to type if the value on raw data, N2 on raw data, is equal to the value I specify in cell T4 on extracted data, then copy over the value from raw data in cell N2. But if it does not equal T4, then fill the cell with empty text, quote unquote, bracket, return. Now we can see that in this case, the record on raw data was for a female student, so the cell was indeed filled with the letter F. Now, I want to copy this formula appropriately to cover every cell of the data range on raw data, but I have to show great care in adjusting the absolute and relative references before just click dragging to copy left, right, and down. So let's look at the formula again. Now for each record, I want to compare the content of column N on raw data with the value in a single fixed cell in extracted data. cell T4. Now, single fixed cell is meaningful. That describes a fixed absolute reference. So let's click on T4 in the formula bar and type F4 until both column and row 4 are fixed as absolute. That's $T, $4. Now for the cell we're comparing to T4, we want to always compare the value in column N for each record because that's where the sex is indicated. So we can fix the column that we compare by typing a $sign in front of the N. But we want to make a different comparison for each individual record down 100 different rows, so we'll leave the row number relative. Now when we click the lower right corner of cell N2 and drag it right, the formula is copied over. And if we look at cell R2, for example, we can see that the copy was performed correctly. This formula compares raw data N2 with extracted data T4, but it fills this cell R2 with the contents of raw data R2. Now, the birth date looks weird because we have to remind Excel that this is date format. So we can specify to show this as date format. And we can also click on the lower right hand corner and drag it left all the way over to column A to complete the copy. And now the ID number looks strange. We have to remind Excel to show this as a number, please, but no decimal places. Now we can select the entire row with Control-Shift right arrow, and we can click the lower right corner of cell R2 and drag it down all the way to row 101, completing the data range. And now we see that some records were copied in their entirety, while some were not. Only the records with an F in column N were copied over. Now, if we go to cell T4 and we type M in cell T4, then only the male records are copied over. The extraction process is dynamic, and it depends on the selection criterion because we wrote our spreadsheet to refer to a cell content, T4, rather than hardwiring a fixed value of F into the formula. And that is best practice for preparing a spreadsheet. Now at this point, we can simplify the extracted data table by deleting entire columns that we don't want. So I'm going to go back to the header row and select column B by clicking on the letter B and then deleting it. And you can see that the entire sheet condenses accordingly, but Excel is smart about it. You can see in cell B2 that Excel knows to adjust the formula reference to T4. T4 has now become S4. But it left the reference to raw data C2 as C2 because nothing has changed in the raw data sheet. We only deleted a column from the extracted data sheet. And we can keep going and delete 8 more columns. You can select multiple columns at once by holding down Shift when you click on the column letter. Now we've deleted the columns that we don't want, and we've only kept the columns that we do want. And this sheet now extracts only the records that we want according to a certain criterion, and it only keeps the fields that we want because we've deleted those that we don't. And the beauty of this is that we only have to do this column deletion step once. The extraction machine now prepared on this sheet is complete, And if we repaste different data into the raw data sheet, the extracted data sheet will update to show just the column data that we want according to the selection criterion. So one last step remains for us to have a convenient workable data range. I'm going to select all the content in columns A to I by click dragging on the letters, and I'm going to copy this with Control-C. And now I'm going to go to the final blank sheet that I named New Table. I'm going to click on cell A1, and I'm going to paste, but in a special way. I don't want to paste the formulas that I just used for the extraction. I just want the values that I extracted. So I'm going to select Paste, Values, and the source formatting just to keep it pretty. Now I have a new range of raw data that is completely independent from the original raw data, as no formulas are present. So if you were to reuse this spreadsheet, you would have to redo the paste values step every time. And if we want to get rid of the blank rows, well, that's easy. We just select columns A to I and then sort the table. Go to Data, Sort, confirm that the selected data has headers. Let's sort by sex based on the cell values in the order Z to A. And this now places all the complete records with the letter F on top, with the blank records underneath for me to ignore, effectively condensing our table. So to summarize, this approach to data extraction is completely reusable. If I paste new data, for example from an updated database, into the raw data sheet, the extracted data sheet will update automatically, and I can adjust the selection criterion as I want. And when I have the records that I want, I can copy them and then paste them as values only onto a third sheet. And this effectively starts a new independent data range. It's no longer linked to the original data, so it's no longer dynamically updated, but it does provide a nice clean starting point for the next steps of whatever workflow I have to perform.